Trees of Garden City, Our History and Our Future. According to the History of Garden City by Mildred Smith, published by the Garden City Historical Society in 1980, quote, "To make it a real garden city, the entire village and park were planted with thousands of trees and shrubs, most of which the new railroad carried on flat cars from Prince's Nursery in Flushing. Most of these were rare trees imported from Europe," unquote. Today, over 150 years later, our tree-lined streets continue to draw people to our beautiful village. And the village's ongoing commitment to trees enhances not only the quality of life and health of our residents, but to surrounding communities as well. Garden City's Environmental Advisory Board has put together this presentation to help answer many of the questions residents have about what we are doing to preserve and replant trees in our village. Paul Blake, who oversees the village's tree program, has joined us to share the history of our trees, as well as the efforts and rules in place to preserve, maintain, and replenish those trees. After Mr. Blake, I will share a summary of the presentation by Vinny Drzeweski of the Cornell Extension. A complete recording of Vinny's presentation is available on the EAB page of the village website.
Well, Mr. Stewart purchased 9,000 acres of basically treeless land here, formerly known as the Hempstead Plains. The interesting thing about this is that Garden City was Mr. Stewart's second attempt at a planned community. Right next door to us, Stewart Manor. And he had planned that community before he did Garden City. And the rumor was that he was not happy with the way Stewart Manor turned out. And so he gave it another shot here in Garden City. Undaunted, Mr. Stewart brought in thousands of trees. We heard about that, laid out the nice wide streets, built the railroad that he used to bring the trees and the building supplies in here. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to see the fruits of his labor. For those of you that are interested, it's difficult for us living here in this era to imagine Garden City without the trees. Well, if you would like, there is one small section of the virgin Hempstead Plains still remaining. It is over on Charles Lindbergh Boulevard. It's just east of the Long Island Marriott and the old Nassau Coliseum. Nassau County preserved it about 25 years ago in honor of former county executive Francis Purcell. And they don't open it all the time, but it does open several times during the year. I believe it'll be open on Earth Day. If you'd like to see what Garden City used to look like, I recommend you go over there, pull your car off to the side of the road, and take a look at what the Hempstead Plains looked like before Mr. Stewart did his tree planting. There are approximately 12,000 village-owned trees here in Garden City. Many of them are, as you know, in the median strip between the street and the sidewalk. And those are the trees that we find to be more problematic due to the small area in which they grow. The remainder of the trees are in village parks, in buffer strips, and in our green spaces. And the responsibility for these trees is the Parks Department. Until about 2008, Parks Department was part of Department of Public Works. And at that time, a decision was made to merge the Parks Department in with the Recreation Department. So the tree crew and all of its personnel came over to Recreation, and they are now all under one umbrella. And here in Garden City, we have a lot of traditions and a lot of heritage. So we want to talk a little bit about where this tree program developed and how it was generated. And we have to name a few people. The first one being Mr. Richard Wickey. Mr. Wickey started with the village in 1958, and he worked here until 1989. A lot of what we're going to talk about tonight came from his imagination and his mind. He was a terrific tree man, and he came up with a lot of the procedures that we use to this day to take care of our trees. He worked with a gentleman side by side named Mike Diddick. And Mike, many of you know, was here for about 30 years himself, and he was our key tree man. He got most of Mr. Wickey's knowledge through assimilation and working with him. Things that Mr. Wickey believed in and knew were important were passed along to Mr. Diddick. Mr. Diddick, in turn, worked with a nice young man named Joe Scapatori, hired only last April. Joe started out as a tree pruner. He was one of the fellows that would climb up in the trees and clip the branches. He also worked side by side with Mike Diddick. So the knowledge that Mike had was passed along to Joe. And you can see where this is going. When Joe retired, he had worked for several years with a gentleman named Steve Barnage. Steve has been here 28 years. He is a nursery manager by title, and he is our main tree man right now. Steve, in turn, works with a gentleman named Rob O'Kane. Rob has been here 16 years. Rob is our tree pruner. He's the gentleman that runs the tree crew. He does all of the pruning. He does all of the removals, along with a group of people that help him. Mr. Wiki was named New York State Arborist, Distinguished Arborist. A lot of what we do today came from Mr. Wiki. Now, a lot of what we talk about is protecting our trees, and there are certain things that we do to protect them. The first local laws aimed at protecting and nurturing our trees were passed in 1967. Most of them were recommended, again, by Mr. Wiki. There were amendments made to these laws in 1982, 89, and 96. The laws cover the planting of trees, the maintenance of healthy trees, preservation of trees, protection and removal of trees. And removal statutes cover both village and privately owned trees. Unlike a lot of areas, our tree ordinances are enforceable by law. They are local laws that were crafted and passed by the Board of Trustees. They can be found in your village code, chapter 188. So let's talk about a couple of them. First one, 188.11. It is unlawful for any person to destroy or remove 2 or more trees in any 12-month period without first getting a permit. You're basically allowed to take down 1 tree per year without a permit. Number 188.11, it's unlawful for any person to destroy or remove any tree that's on village property, in the village right-of-way, or any tree planted by the village. We plant it, we own it. If there's a tree in the village right-of-way or in that median strip that you believe is a danger, it's blocking your view trying to come out of your driveway, it's gotten too big, we'll come over and take a look at it. But again, you have to have a permit to remove it. And we're going to come over and we're going to inspect. Number 188.1, no person shall plant any tree or shrub between the curb line and the property line without first obtaining a permit from the village. So again, if you want to plant a tree in that median strip, you do need to come into our office and fill out a permit. We'll go over, we'll take a look, we'll question you as to the type of tree that you're going to plant, and we'll decide either yes or no. And 188.6, this one is important. It prohibits you from having infestations or diseases in your trees. We just had one of these come up last week. A property owner called with concern about a tree on the next property that looked like it was in bad condition, and they were concerned that it might come down. We sent our crew over there, and sure enough, the tree is very badly diseased. The bark is coming off and something is at it. So we are directing the property owner to remove that tree. This is a little unusual for a lot of municipalities to be able to go onto private property and take a look at the tree and decide whether it has to come down or not. But it's part of these regulations that were passed that are very inclusive and very wide ranging. It's really interesting to see what they wrote into the book. Question about what trees do we plant? And through the years, we've kind of learned which trees work well in our climate, which ones don't push up the sidewalks too much. And these are the most commonly planted trees from the last 2 tree plantings. Tulip trees. These are lovely trees. They have very bright green leaves. The leaves turn yellow in the fall, and they get nice yellowish flowers high up in the crown of the tree. And they're very durable too. They are pretty hardy. Tree lilac. This is similar to a lilac shrub, but it's larger, obviously, and it's a tree. Large clusters of small white fragrant flowers. They smell terrific. If you're lucky enough to have a lilac tree by your home, you'll enjoy it in the later part of spring. Little leaf lindens. Linden trees are one of the more popular trees here in the village. We have them in several locations, including over on the President Streets and some over on the east side of town as well. They have an attractive heart-shaped leaf, and they go from light to dark green. And again, nice yellow flowers, and they do have a nice fragrance to them. Hardy rubber tree. This is a thick, very glossy leafed tree. It gets its name from the sap that pours out of the leaf. If you take the leaf off the tree and break it open, it has a gooey white substance. Looks like Elmer's glue. Tough tree, very pest-free and long-lasting. And sugar maples. These are nice shade trees. They have a very dense crown. And in the fall, the colors are brilliant, yellow, orange, and red. So those are the ones that have been primarily planted for the last couple of plantings. Some of the trees that we try to avoid, or we use them only in specific locations, London plane tree, also known as a sycamore. But sycamore trees are great because they're very hardy. They are beautiful the way the bark breaks off and gives you different patterns like a jigsaw puzzle. They have great big leaves that provide lots of shade, but the downside is they're messy. Red maples, nice color, they're hardy, and the leaf shape is that beautiful design like you'd see on the Toronto Maple Leafs uniform, if you're a hockey fan. Sawtooth oak is the variety that we tend to plant now. We've moved away a little bit from the pin oaks, which had been planted throughout the village. Those are nice trees, but they're extremely messy. They put out a lot of acorns and a lot of buds, and they tend to make a mess on your lawn and your driveway. Norway maples. Only plant this where we have Norway maples. It does tend to be a little bit of an issue with the roots and the sidewalks, and we try to avoid trees that do that because we know it's frustrating when your sidewalk has to be replaced. What kind of trees should we avoid? Silver maples, magnolias, willows, poplars, and elms. One of the more popular trees back in the 50s and 60s were Lombardy poplars, and you used to see them all over the village. Away from planting these varieties, and we try to plant trees that are less troublesome to the sidewalk, and that would include, again, linden, lilac, hornbeam, cherry trees, and dogwoods. Our engineering department has been researching some methods of controlling the roots and helping to keep the sidewalks down. So some of the things that John Baroni, who's our senior village civic engineer, has been working on. First one is heavier concrete, root barrier systems. This is where we would excavate a much larger hole for the root ball. They try to build almost a corral for the tree roots so they can't get out under the sidewalk. Root channeling, they take a PVC pipe, approximately 2 feet in diameter, they fill it about half filled with soil, and then they put the roots into that PVC pipe and they run it under the sidewalk. So the roots can grow in the pipe, but they won't push the sidewalk up. Alternative sidewalk material is to some of the poured in place safety surfacing that you might see in the playgrounds. The problem with these surfaces is that they do tend to flex somewhat, but pushed far enough, they will crack and they will need repairs, just like the concrete sidewalks. We heard Vinny talk about you can't have a tree management plan without a tree inventory. And as I mentioned, we did have that young lady start the tree inventory and enter it into the GIS system. That data entry program continued. It says 2009 up there, but it actually went, we found out this morning, till about 2015. We actually found the old laptop that was used, and Ryan, our IT genius back here, managed to find a charger for it, and we booted it up, and there was information in there up to about 2015. So we're going to hook that back up to the GIS system and make sure all of that information is in the current GIS system. We're going to restart this program. Our maintenance foreman is looking at some new updated software, which can be used not only to catalog the tree information, but to allow us to retrieve it. The new system will be compatible with the GIS system, and it will be completely portable. And it will be able to be used on iPads and cell phones. This is one of the systems we're looking at. It's called Tree Plotter. They've run a couple of simulations on it, and it seems pretty user-friendly. The nice thing about this is it will have a residence portal so that you can go in and punch in your address or just put your pointer over a specific tree, click on it, and you'll get whatever information we have on the tree. So what we want to enter is when was the tree planted, when maintenance was done on it, and when there were service calls on it. So you will be able to go in at some point and click on your tree and find out the information that we have about it. It will also be useful to us when we get questions about when was that tree last pruned, when was this neighborhood last done. Again, they are looking at that right now, and we hopefully will have some sort of recommendation in the next few months as to what kind of system we want to use. But we do want to get that started again. That's really important. The village commitment to our trees is strong and ongoing. Tree plantings are funded annually through the capital budget plan, and the current proposed budget, which will be voted on shortly, contains about $225,000 for planting of trees through the 25-26 budget year. This is a good amount of money and will allow us to keep planting that magic 2-for-1 number every year through 26. One of the challenges we have is getting the manpower out to take care of our trees. We currently have one full tree crew. We only have one tree pruner on staff. Tree pruner is a civil service title. There are certain requirements that have to be met before somebody can be put on as a tree pruner. We have been trying to hire a tree pruner for the last year or two, and we just weren't able to find one. We hired a gentleman about a year and a half ago, and he expressed an interest in learning about trees. So we have assigned him to Rob O'Kane, who is our tree pruner. He's been working on the tree crew for about the last 8 months, and he seems to have a real affinity for it. So he's out every day with the tree crew. He's learning the craft. We are hopeful that he will be able to qualify for that pruner title in the near future, at which point we'll be able to field 2 pruning crews. And that will allow us to get a lot more work done in-house on those small to medium trees. We're still going to have to go outside for the larger trees, but we do that every year with a tree removal contract. And we've been very lucky with the contractors that we've had over the last few years. They've been very responsive and they do a good job. They work closely with our guys, and we're very happy with the way that works. We continue residents aware of our tree program through participation in Tree City USA and our annual Arbor Day celebration. Nobody was more surprised than I was when I came back to the village 3 years ago and found that we had let the Tree City program lapse. That was always something that we took a lot of pride in. And we did reapply, and we have gotten it now for the past 2 years. And actually last year, we were named as one of the few 30-year Tree City participants. So we do plan to participate in that program, and we look forward to having that flag flying outside for a
Thank you, Mr. Blake, for that very informative presentation. Vinny Jazweski, an urban forestry and horticulture educator, joined us to share critical information with residents on the importance of trees in our community. He began with a quote to illustrate how essential trees are to our existence on Earth. Quote, "If the heat bothers you, plant a tree. If the water bothers you, plant a tree. If you like fruits, plant a tree. If you like birds, plant a tree. And if you like life, plant many trees." Unquote. We exist on Earth because of oxygen, and trees played a significant role in changing the Earth's atmosphere about 370 million years ago. So an atmosphere that has an abundance of oxygen. So trees have been on Earth for about 370 million years, while humans have been on Earth close to 7 million years. Vinny Jazweski made the point that humans are working at a breakneck pace to remove all of the trees, which is starting to have devastating impacts on our environment. This, he noted, brings us to the last line of his quote, "If you like life, plant many trees." He spoke of education about the value of trees and defined urban forestry. It turns out all of Long Island is considered urban for the purposes of urban forestry. Satellite photos of Nassau County show a significant reduction in the tree canopy over the last 50 years due to progress and development. Mr. Jazweski shared these statistics regarding the power of trees in the United States and how they provide us with a bigger picture of the benefit of trees. For example, 1,438.2 million tons of CO2 equivalent are removed by trees. Over 398 million gallons of storm runoff are avoided, and over 35 million pounds of air pollution are absorbed by trees. Vinny Jazweski spoke of a medical crisis in the country, with people suffering from respiratory ailments at alarming rates not seen in the past, and he stated that this could be directly connected to a dwindling canopy of trees. He spoke of how New York City has been doing a great job over the last 10 to 15 years of planting more trees and recognizing the benefits of trees in urban areas. He shared these environmental benefits of trees. Trees improve the air quality by cleaning the air. They sequester carbon, reducing the greenhouse effect. They conserve energy by protecting surroundings from sun and wind. They slow climate change. They cool the air through transpiration. They moderate the effect of the sun, the wind, and the rain. They reduce stormwater runoff and soil erosion. They provide and improve habitat for wildlife. Additionally, he shared significant economic benefits of trees. Trees increase residential and business property values between 5 and 20%. They increase the tax base for communities. They lower energy use costs for heating and air conditioning. Trees attract visitors, businesses, and new residents. They increase the rental of apartments and offices and reduce vacancy rates. They encourage shoppers to linger and buy more. They defer maintenance on materials that are degraded by heat, such as pavements. We thank Vinny Drzeski for joining us for this program and providing this important information on the value of trees in our community. We hope you enjoyed learning more about the legacy of trees and the village's ongoing commitment to planting and maintaining our beautiful trees. Please reach out to the EAB with any follow-up questions or suggestions.